Well, hi everyone. Welcome back to our webinar series. I'm Emma Maslen. I'm the CEO of inspir'em, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Matt Clementson from Iterable, who will be talking to us about identifying champions. But before we get started and introduce Matt, just a couple of little things I just wanted to just mention. So this is the champion series we're going to be starting, that's going to be running through to the summer. We're going to start today with identifying champions. We'll talk about champions and coaches. We'll talk about building champions, testing champions, getting access to the economic buyer. That's a plan over the series. The next webinar will be in 2 weeks' time on the 9th of May, where we'll be talking to Kira McQuaid about, we'll be talking about champions and coaches, about the difference there and some of the things that you should be looking for. So make sure that you've got that date in the diary. Also, at the end of today's webinar as well, when we've stopped recording, what I am going to do is I'm going to stay on because we've made some pretty significant changes to our platform over the Easter holidays with some new downloadables that are easy for you to access to get started with MEDDIC, MEDDPICC, pipeline generation, and some things for the leaders as well. So if you do want to hang around for that show around at the end, you'll be very welcome. So today's subject that we're going to be talking about is identifying champions. And so delighted to be joined by Matt. So Matt, did you want to kick off with an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, Emma. Look, afternoon, everybody. Really appreciate the invite, Emma. Obviously, you and I have worked together for a number of years and stuff like that. My current job is I am the general manager and the head of sales for Iterable for the international market. I'm fairly new to the role. I've been in here for 7 months now. It's interesting. It's a bit like building an aeroplane in flight, I have to say. But all the stuff that we've learned over this is my 25th year in sales, actually. That's the other thing of bit frightening. But yeah, it's really good, and it's fast moving, fast paced, and everything we've learned over the number of years is it's great to be able to pass some of that knowledge down to some of the newbies that are coming up through the ranks.
Excellent. Great. Well, 25 years in sales. Congratulations for that, Matt. That's great. So today we're going to be talking about identifying champions. And this is something that, so in all parts of the sales cycle, certainly some of the questions that we have on our courses and throughout our coaching that we do, people have a lot of questions around this. So we've got a few questions that are posed for Matt today, but also if you have any questions, then please feel free to put them into the chat. Obviously, both of us are experienced sales leaders, so we can answer some of the questions around some of the traps that you see most in the sales cycle. So we're going to kick off with talking about identifying champions. So that's throughout the sales process and in prospecting. So our definition of a champion is power and influence, track record for a case for change, something to gain, and access to the economic buyer, giving you access to the economic buyer. So Matt, just to kick off with then, what are some of the challenges that you see across your sales management experience where you feel that AEs are identifying champions and perhaps things aren't all as they seem?
Yeah, it's a common misconception that people think they have a champion very quickly in a sales process. And they may have a champion, they just might not have realised they're a champion yet. But often it is in the first sort of initial meetings, you've probably got a coach. In most new business meetings, so normally in the first meeting, the second meeting, we're always looking for the MIC of MEDDIC. So we're looking for metrics, identify pain, and a coach or champion. And they're not always as vocal or as visible as you might think. So I think that is the one thing is to just you have to validate, you have to double, triple check. And I think we mentioned you need to date a few people before you realize you've actually got a proper champion.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we very much advocate for is, we very terribly use the dating analogy around champions. And, you don't take the first person to dinner that you meet, if you're online dating, or certainly you shouldn't. Apparently, I've been married for longer than I haven't, so who knows what I know. But the idea of the fact that you should actually be dating around a little bit and actually working out, well, actually, who has the power here? Who knows how things work? What's actually going on? Who's got the pain is just really important. But like you say, it takes a few meetings to be able to do that. You can't do that sort of out of the gate in a first meeting. So just on that, though, how does that manifest itself? What do you see is happening? What's the impact of not dating around and not building those champions? What do you see?
Well, a really good situation that I've literally just found myself in after doing a bunch of analysis in the current business I'm in is that if we only speak to say two or three, it's two or three people within a deal, and the reps are calling this as this is a best case almost committable deal, um, we find that our win rate drops below lower than 20%. When we speak to five or plus people in a deal, we go up into the 40s. And normally what happens is that you haven't found your champion in those first 1 to 3 contacts. You might have found someone who can get you to someone who might be a champion. And also the other thing I've had a real example this week is that don't be fooled around who the EB really is and testing that, because of real life examples where we've got to where we think we know the EB, where we think the champion's taken us to an EB, and we've gone all in on that person based on their title or their position in the company, to only find out that we were dealing with a coach and we were dealing with someone who, even though they may have been the CEO or CFO, they were not the EB and they were overruled. And this is where you need to ask difficult questions early on in the sales cycle. I think the key thing with a champion is it is hard to recognize them up front, and it takes a while. You need to give them little tests, and that little test can be as simple as, can you get me an email address? Can you get me an introduction to someone else? Could you give me an introduction to procurement or finance, whoever it is you want to speak to? Obviously, I'm in the MarTech space at the moment and stuff like that. So we try, and what I've often found is people end up, because they think we're selling just marketing software, they stay within the marketing pillar of a company. Where actually some of your biggest coaches and champions could be in finance, they could be in procurement, they could be in other parts of the business. So what I'd probably say to the question, Emma, is don't be fooled by what you're selling. It's only applicable to the people that you think it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually there's a few really great points in there, Matt, just to summarize some of those then. So certainly just on the buy-in centers, for example, like you say, the more people you're talking to, the more choice you've got, the higher the conversion rate. We talked about this a lot in the previous webinar, actually, around, Gartner and Forrester now say that typical buying groups for software are between 10 to 12. Now, it doesn't mean to say that you've got 10 to 12 champions. It's just that there are many people you're going to touch within a sales cycle. But the other point I'd pick up on what you just mentioned there as well about the multiple personas, it's so important that quite often what we do is, like you say, is we fool ourselves and think, oh, well, that person's got the right job title, therefore that person has to be the champion. They should be the champion. Well, actually, not necessarily. And also, sometimes as well, with some of these more service centers, there are other people that are more powerful. So there might be people in the business that are more powerful. So it sounds like making sure you've got a really broad org chart, lots of departments, lots of connections would certainly be some of the advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure most of the viewers know this stuff, but a true champion is selling on your behalf. What you'll probably hear now these days is that 50-60% of the buying decisions already been made before you've probably even been introduced to that business, or a lead's coming through the front door, or you've PG'd into it. So a lot of work's already been done. The teams have been out there scouting for solutions and stuff like that. So there normally is a play already inside the organization. I think the other thing as well, as you mentioned, was around the pain that needs to be identified. The pain at one level within an org might be so severe that it's crippling that bit, but you go 2 levels up, they don't care about that pain because they haven't. It's not aligned to their corporate objectives or business objectives or whatever it might be. So sometimes you'll get someone who's really vocal and really think, yeah, we've got to buy this because of this, and then you end up getting happy ears and all that good stuff. But actually, go up a couple of levels or get to the right people, they'll say, well, that's their job. That's what we pay them to do. So that's not going to move the dial. Sorry, we're spending over here. This is a strategic decision to go down this route.
Yeah, and that goes back to what you said earlier on, which is, discovery in the very beginning is about M, I, and C. There's only 4 currencies of pain, which is revenue, cost, risk, shareholder commitments. I think quite often what we see is people identifying champions really low in the organization where there's a technical pain, but actually there's no currency within the organization for it. It's not got a revenue impact, there's no risk impact, there's no cost impact. So therefore, getting a decision made about that piece of software, it's too low down in the weeds. Okay. So another question that I've got for you then is around prospecting. So, that's all great, but the thing is, and we're talking about dating some people, but what do you do on the outside in? So when you're targeting people in the beginning, what are some of the tips that you might suggest when you haven't talked to anybody yet? So who are the types of people that you might decide to target, and why? So any tips or advice there?
Yeah, sure thing. So I think it is, again, you understand your ICP. So what is your key target? and what are the key personas within that. So you've got your market you're going after, then you've kind of got your key people that you're looking to try and get into. I think if you're looking to try and identify a champion from just the outside in, I'd be looking for people that are quite vocal about what they've done and what they've done on LinkedIn. Anyone who's I love people who do case studies, video case studies, get online, talk things, do podcasts, because they tend to be people that want to progress, want to be seen as being a disruptor. And when I say disruptor, I mean a disruptor within their business to make transformational changes. Those sort of people are quite good to look for. If you get people that are a little bit meek, sometimes they're sort of not very vocal, a very basic LinkedIn profile, or not very active in the space, not part of any groups, then they probably tend to be more of, they'll probably end up being a coach and what have you, and they'll have no preference. So they're the main sort of things I'm looking for. If people say, okay, this person's a champion, I'll go, well, what have they done before?
Yeah.
Have they done this before? As an example, where was it? Do we know anyone who was at that company? Is it one of our customers or our prospects already? Can we validate it? You know, just because you can also validate your champions in the opportunity you're working with other people that may know them. So that's something that a lot of people miss.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really couple of great points in there as well. Just having somebody that is allowed to be the spokesperson for the company tells you that they have power and influence, they're in the right space, they know how to get on those types of case studies. Not only the fact are they've got the mechanism to do that, but then they are actually speaking on behalf of the company. But like you say, we look for that too, which is, we're looking for people with ego, the people who are proud of their achievements and talking about their achievements, because that then ultimately becomes their career as well. So so absolutely, looking at case studies is a really great idea. But also, as you mentioned there, and I just want to belabor the point so that people didn't miss it, which is it's a small world in sales, right? So if you've got somebody that's been a case study for someone else, you may well know that salesperson that's gone and sold that and done that thing. So actually you can go and validate that sort of externally as well. No, that's great. What about let's talk for a second about sort of other personas that we talk to. So we talk about coaches quite a lot, and obviously we talk about economic buyer as well. Firstly, I want you to ask you the question around, what would your advice be if you are working with somebody, you feel that they are your champion, and yet you have this dawning realization moment where you think, I think they're a coach, they're not a champion. What would your advice be there? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's like the bottom of your world's fallen out when you realize that you can't actually get you to where you need to be, and you're starting to hear rumblings that they're talking to other people or whatever it might be as part of the solution. It's a tricky one, because the crux of it is you need to go and find another one, and you need to find another one pretty quick, because you're probably at what you think is at the closing part of the deal, and you think you're nearly over the line, and then all of a sudden, hold on a second, I haven't got access to the EB really, or I haven't got access to the real business cases. I haven't checked whether IT are going to have resources to help get this over the line, and IT might end up being the blocker. Maybe I need to go and get a champion inside IT that will help smooth the path to create a way to get this done. So I would be saying you need to go wider, faster, quicker. I think one of the other things as well, Emma, around testing champions, and again, this is something that I've only really come across in the industry that I'm in now, is that we tend to find that champions talk on multiple levels, and what I mean by that, I mean multiple types of communication. The multiple channels, and so. And this is quite unusual, because they're talking on WhatsApp, email, SMS, MMS, LinkedIn conversations. It's not just email. It's not just Zoom calls, Teams calls, whatever it is. Whereas coaches tend to not want to go off multiple channels. The deals that I tend to want to see in forecast are we use Slack as one of our tools here. If someone tells me they're on Slack and they're talking to them on a regular basis, then I probably think we've either got a really good coach, or I can test it to be a champion. If they're saying I'm waiting for an email or I'm waiting for a call back, then they're probably not the right people that we should be talking to.
Yeah. Well, I think it shows, going back to we talk about something to gain a lot. And, if somebody's got something to gain, they're going to find the fastest way to communicate, and probably it be less formal. because they're wanting to get something done, and there's that constant flow of communication that's happening. So that would absolutely make sense. And we talk about this a lot around, people WhatsApping and texting appropriately, obviously, but with updates. It's really important that we would see that. So yeah, and again, just to your point there about when you find a coach, advice that we give, which is, if you have that moment, the faster you go back to the beginning and you say, right, I haven't got this right, I haven't qualified MIC correctly, I need to go back to who would be the person that would gain from this particular pain, looking at the business case. The faster you go back when a deal is stalled, the faster you'll close your deal, because otherwise you'll just stay in that sticky middle in the middle of a sales cycle for sure.
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
about economic buyers then as well? We often get the question about can the economic buyer be the champion too? So is it just one person that we're looking for? Are we looking for an economic buyer and champion all in a perfectly formed human?
I have some reps that tell me that, but generally it isn't. As we said, you normally get like the worker bees that are sent out to do the discovery and the scope and do the sort of like the analysis and pull the plan together. And one thing we talk about at the moment is about when we're trying to outsell the competition. The people that do that are the ones that do the most discovery and build the best business case. And to build the best business case, you need to get to the right people. And to your point, normally the EB isn't the champion. They might be a supporter, for example, but getting to the true EB normally doesn't happen until you've got a really solid business case. That they tend to not be on the first few calls. They tend to have sent out, so go and work out what we do. We know what the problems are. Come back to me, feedback in, so to speak. So I don't want to generalize, but I would generally say that your champion isn't the EB. They will take you to the EB and they will help you get a line of communication to them. Whereas a coach will tend to keep their powder dry and doesn't want to be seen as going with any one preferred vendor or anything like that. And a coach is telling everyone the same thing. Let's be honest, right? That's why they're coaches and not champions. Whereas a champion will tell you what you need to know, and you can generally get to asking difficult questions. So yeah, they don't. It's very rare they're the same. I wouldn't say they never are, but it's very rare.
Yeah, I think we go down the line of, an economic buyer has to be, a champion by nature. They've got to have power and influence, something to gain, track record for change. And obviously, you're giving access to cash at the end of the day, but they can't be the champion, because the thing is with the champion itself in that persona is they are going to be, like you say, the worker bee. They're going to be the one running around the building with a piece of paper, working out the approvals and all those sorts of things. Very, very unusual for that to be a C-suite individual who can deploy cash, because that's just not going to be the case. So, okay. If anybody's got any questions for Matt, then, or please do pop them into the chat or in Q&A, and we can answer some questions for you. So, yeah, so really interesting around that. Let's just go back to building champions then, because I know that this is something that you've worked really hard on over the years, when we knew each other when you were a rep, and then obviously as a sales leader as well. Perhaps what are some of your tips around building champions? You talked a little bit about events earlier, those types of things, but what are your top tips for really making sure that you've got good, solid relationships with making people your champions rather than just a champion?
Yes, it's good question actually, because when you've found a champion, the best AEs that we've worked with, Emma, that those champions follow them. So the AEs will keep an eye on them. There's lots of tools out there that can do this, like user gems and things like that. But generally, I think throughout your career, you may only have 10 or 20 real champions, that like really good champions that you could, when they move company and you could call them back up again, they'll actually, I've got you, I've got your back. You're right. You've called me at the right time. I can help you get in. I think it's building those. It's almost a little bit like you've got to get into value-based selling. You've got to be selling outcome-based solutions, and you've got to be given a true champion wants to know what's in it for them. So, and generally it could be exposure, it could be a promotion, a pay rise, whatever it might be, or they want to go for their next job. And as you get to know these people and they sort of learn to trust you, and they don't see you as just trying to sell them something. And I think the best AEs that do this, they don't try to force the sale on the champion. They will literally say, look, if we're not right for you, look, tell us now. We'll walk. Let's save us all a load of pain, and we'll walk away now. So I think it is building the trust and the confidence with them that you're trying to do something for their business, to putting the company first, then putting the team first, and then the individual first.
Yeah.
So in that order.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember I've had somebody that's been a champion for me in multiple organizations over the years. And actually, the very first time I dealt with that individual, I was very young, in my 20s. And there was a lot of bad stuff that was going on in the company that I was working for with that company as a customer. And then over the years, we sort of built up this relationship. And then I said to him years later, I said, well, why did you put your faith in somebody so young that I felt actually probably didn't deserve it? And he said, well, actually, it's because you listened, because we had problems. We needed you to solve them. And actually, you solved those problems. So, and that just it just was amazing for the rest of my career in terms of what that person then purchased from me, because the trust was there that I was never trying to do anything that was against what they needed. So yeah, that's absolutely great advice. So we've got a couple of questions that are coming for the chat. So Paul Bidder has said that he can't ask you any questions. So obviously, because he works for you, so he'll ask you some of those later on. But anyway, so Alison King has asked a great question, which is, can a champion be the same person to two suppliers in a competitive engagement? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's a good question. In theory, that they can, but a true champion will have picked their side. So they will know. So I would probably say, I would like to go with no. A champion is generally has got your back. They're selling on your behalf, and you go with that. If they're telling both sides everything on, they're probably more of a coach, and that's what you need to test.
Yep. So our party line on this one is a champion can be a champion if they meet the four characteristics. So power and influence, track record for a case for change, something to gain, and access to the economic buyer. The question is what are they championing? Because actually, and it's an important point to understand, because what we often forget is we often identify the champion. We're thinking our champion, but what we're not thinking about, who's the champion for do nothing, who's the champion for the other big project that's nothing to do with you, but actually it's more important, and then also who is the competitor champion as well. So we would say that it's definitely worth having a think about exactly that, which is whose sides have they picked. So a champion can be, in the beginning, could be anybody's champion, but you've got to make them your champion. That's got to be the big question. So yeah, thanks for that question, Alison. That's a great one. So maybe just a final thought from you then, Matt, just on your just thinking about champions then. What's your one piece of advice that you would give everybody on champions? What do you think your advice of the day would be?
I think it is find them fast. So it's a bit like a deal, fail early. Find them as fast as you can, tiny little tests, and increase the intensity of those tests throughout the period of the process you're going through. As you say, when you get further down the sales cycle and it starts to get into forecasting territory, and my managers, myself, are starting to sort of put things into commit and stuff like that, we have to go back and look for these things, and it gives us confidence and it gives us credibility if we say actually that is a real champion, and that person will speak to other people within our organization as well. So, a good champion, one of my AEs, i.e. Paul, can actually get me access to that person really quickly. And I can ask the difficult questions that may not have been asked throughout the process without it being offensive, because we've actually built that trust, or Paul's built that trust up front.
Yeah.
So go early.
Yeah. And yeah, we often say to people, our job in sales is about revenue with control. If you don't ask questions and you don't validate, there's no control. So absolutely. So making sure that you're another great piece of advice I had early on in my career, which was be the most paranoid salesperson you can be. Obviously, without being slightly weird about it, but be paranoid, ask loads of questions.
Yeah.
So very good. Well, that was amazing, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us today. And hopefully we'll have you on another one again in the future. So thanks very much.
Anytime. Thanks very much for having me, everybody. Good luck.